Good evening, everybody. Welcome to PJ Chapter Book Time. We've been enjoying this great book by Thomas Rockwell called How to Eat Fried Worms, and it indeed is about that. This group of boys got together, and one of the boys, Joe, bet another of the boys, Billy, that he could not eat 15 worms. And Billy said yes, he could. And Joe said, I bet you $50 that you can't eat 15 worms. And so the bet began. Every day, Billy eats a worm or two. He's up to worm number 9. Joe's a little bit nervous because he's actually very nervous because it looks like Billy may be indeed able to eat 15 fried worms. And that would mean Joe would have to come up with the $50 to pay him to honor his side of the bet. So Joe's been being rather creative about trying to figure out ways to trick Billy into giving up his quest. So let's see what's going to happen tonight's chapters. We start off with chapter 20 called Billy's Mother. Billy slumped at the kitchen table on one elbow, pawing his bowl of Wheaties with his spoon. His mother was washing the breakfast dishes at the sink. But why isn't it good to eat hot dogs for breakfast? I know nobody does, but why don't they? Oh, Billy, said his mother, stop it. Finish your cereal. Well, but there was a knock on the screen door. Billy's mother glanced around. Oh, hello, Alan. Joe? Is your sister better, Joe? Yes, thank you, ma'am. Billy can't come out until he's finished his breakfast. Would you like to wait for him on the front porch? We came to see you, Mrs. Forrester. Oh, come on in. Mrs. Forrester, said Joe, as Alan shut the door carefully behind them. I don't know if you know about it already, but see, about a week ago, Alan made this bet with Billy about eating worms. If Billy could eat 15 worms, one each day for 15 days, then... Oh, Billy, you're not still eating them. Billy stuffed a spoonful of Wheaties into his mouth. Not just worms, Mom. I've been eating lots of other stuff, too. Look at me, I'm healthy. Dr. McGrath told you the worms wouldn't hurt me. But Billy, Dr. McGrath didn't think you were going to keep on eating worms. Joe nudged Alan and grinned. Oh, Mom, if 5 worms wouldn't hurt me, a few more won't either. They're little worms. Besides, it's a bet. They're big worms, Mrs. Forrester, said Joe, looking virtuous. We won't lie to you. My mother told me to never tell a lie. Manure, said Billy. Mom, it's a bet. I told you. If I win, Alan's going to pay me $50. I'm sorry, it wasn't Joe that did the bet, it was Alan. $50, young man. Don't you move from that chair. And she went off into the front hall. Thanks, whispered Billy, but you'll see, it won't work. Alan and Joe gazed nonchalantly at the ceiling. Billy's mother's voice came from the front hall. Dr. McGrath? I'm awfully sorry to bother you again. It's such a ridiculous matter, but since I spoke to you, Billy has continued to eat worms. Pause. No, it's nothing like that. He's acting perfectly normal otherwise. It seems he made a bet with some other boys. One every day. He has to eat 15 to win the bet. Oh, thank you, Dr. McGrath. Sorry to bother. She returned to the kitchen. But no more bets after this one, Billy. Alan and Joe, don't you egg him on any more. He's far too eager to do wild things. Billy yucked silently at Joe and Alan. Alan made a rude gesture at him. Mrs. Forrester, said Joe, what we really came about is that Alan and me are going up to Lake Lauderdale today with my father to fish. And we won't be back until tomorrow night. So we wondered if you'd make sure that Billy eats the worms today and tomorrow. It's not that we don't trust Billy, Mrs. Forrester. No, said Billy's mother, smiling. But it's always better if there's a referee, you know, like Mr. Simmons says at school, to save arguments and hard feelings. We brought the 2 worms. He held up a paper bag. We boiled them already, so you can just keep them in the refrigerator. Well, said Billy's mother, this is quite a responsibility. Are you sure I'll be neutral enough? I am his mother. Yeah, we thought of that, said Joe. But we figured, well, you're usually pretty fair. And besides, parents almost never cheat kids if it's just something between kids. They're usually pretty fair until they get into it. Billy's mother laughed. And how does he eat them? Just cold boiled? Well, we've been frying them, Mrs. Forrester. We roll them in cornmeal and then fry them like a fish. But he can do whatever he wants. Except that Alan and me have decided it's not fair to make soup out of them or chop them all up like hash or a chicken salad sandwich. He's got to eat them piece by piece. Who said? Yelled Billy. When was that ever in the rules? We said, shouted Alan. There's a picture of them holding up the bag of worms to Mrs. Forrester. Billy jumped up, kicking his chair over. Well, then I win, because it's cheating to make up new rules in the middle. Oh, yeah, shouted Alan. Then you lose, because anybody knows it'd be cheating to hash it up. You think you're going to weasel out of it after I've already eaten 9? Who's weaseling? You're cheating. Yeah. Boys, Billy, Alan. Now, Billy, let me speak first. I do think Alan and Joe are right. It wouldn't be fair to cut the worm all up. You can just think of some other way of fixing it. Thank you, Joe. She took the paper bag and looked inside. Phew, Billy, are you sure? Mom, you've eaten eels. You ate eels last summer in Long Island. These are just smaller. They're the same thing. Well, she put the paper bag in the refrigerator. I guess if Dr. McGrath says it's all right, why don't you all go outside? I wouldn't go across the street with those finks, said Billy. They can... Pardon me. Yeah, shouted Alan. Well, we don't want to go anywhere with you either. Yeah, shouted Billy. Boys, cried Mrs. Forrester, stop it. All right, Alan and Joe, you better go. The screen door banged behind them. Said Billy scornfully. Joe's face appeared at the screen. Thanks for saying you'll help us out, Mrs. Forrester. Chapter 21, The 10th Worm. What's for dinner? Said Billy's father, coming into the kitchen. Well, said Billy's mother, you and I and Emily are having hamburgers and string beans and mashed potatoes. Billy is having a fried worm. More worms? The bet's still on? Look, she took a small plate covered with saran wrap out of the refrigerator. And you've eaten 9 of these already, Billy? He poked the worms curiously. What do you do? Use a lot of ketchup and mustard? Billy nodded. And horseradish and other things. And we fry them. Billy's father lifted a corner of the saran wrap and smelled the worms. Helen, you ought to be able to do better than fried. Use your cookbooks. I'm not the cook. I'm just the referee. Oh, come on. Think of the challenge. He took a cookbook from the shelf under the spice rack. Let's see. Mastering the Art of French Cooking. That's a really good cookbook. He leafed through the cookbook. Here, how about poached eels on toast? No, said Billy's mother. It calls for chopping up the eels in little pieces, and that would be against the rules. How about spaghetti with worm balls, then? Or a savory worm pie, creamed worms on toast? Oh, yikes. Spanish worm loaf with mushroom sauce. Wait, said Billy's mother, putting down her cooking spoon. It might just... She took the cookbook and turned to the index. Here. She read, Alsatian smothered worm. Dredge the worm with seasoned flour. Sauté in 3 tablespoons of drippings until brown. Cover with sliced onions. Pour over 1 cup of thick sour cream. Cover a pot closely and bake in a slow oven until tender. Bravo, said Billy's father. Put the hamburgers back in the refrigerator. We'll all have worm tonight. Oh, I won't, said Emily. Ha, said Billy, grinning in the middle of chewing. Boy, Alan and Joe thought they were doing me in when they came to you, Mom. But this is better than steak. It really tastes good. Yug, muttered Emily, making a face. Let me have a taste, said Billy's father. No, no, said his mother. Billy has to eat every bit himself. Alan and Joe were very firm about that, and I'm the referee. Boy, said Billy, I don't mind if it tastes like this. Chapter 22, the 11th worm. Let's see what his mom does with this one. How'd you do it, said Billy. What's it called? My word, said his father. Gosh, Mrs. Forrester, gasped Tom. On a silver dish in front of Billy lay an ice cream cake bathed in fruit syrups, peach and cherry and tutti frutti and candied orange, topped with whipped cream, sprinkled with jelly beans and almond slivers. It's called a whiz-bang worm delight, said Billy's mother proudly. I made it up. Is the worm really in there? Said Billy, poking about with his spoon. And then, scraping away a bit of whipped cream at one end, he glimpsed the worm's snout protruding from the center of the cake. Snug as a bug in a rug, said his mother. Oh, I still wouldn't eat a worm, said Emily, eyeing the whiz-bang worm delight with enormous distaste. I would, said Tom. At least maybe I would. Remember when they tried to get Tom to eat the worm, and he ended up running out of the barn away from the boy so he wouldn't have to do it. Chapter 23. It won't work. Look, said Joe, even if he remembers the worm while we were at Shea, he can't get one. Where's anyone going to find a worm at Shea Stadium? Don't worry, we'll say you've won. We'll find a worm after we get home. And we keep right on stuffing him. Peanuts and hot dogs and hamburgers, Cracker Jacks, ice cream, orange soda, gum, Mars bars. You know how he loves to eat. You ever see him refuse something to eat? By the time we start home, he'll be bloated, drowsy, belching. Remember the last time when his father took us? He was asleep by the time we hit Peekskill. Your father will carry him in from the car. His mother and father will put him to bed, and next morning he'll wake up, and too late. You've won. 15 worms in 15 days. He missed by a day. Admirals Nagumo and Kusaka on the bridge of Akaiga, December 6, 1941. Well, that's a long title for a chapter. Alan nodded at his thumbnail. What about Tom? We'll ask him along, and then just not pick him up. I can tell your father and Billy that Tom's mother called, and he was sick. His grandmother died. Anything, just so we don't have to bring him with us. Alan sighed. Geez, it'll probably cost me $8 just to buy all that food. Cracker Jacks, hamburgers. Yeah, but it'll cost you $50 if he wins. Yeah, well... Oh, geez, how'd I ever get into this? If my father finds out... Alan slumped on the porch steps, gazing down at his sneakers, gnawing at his thumbnail. Come on, said Joe, slapping him on the shoulder. Cheer up. You haven't lost yet. Go ask your father. Chapter 14. You think Alan really meant it when he said he'd given up? Asked Billy, turning down the flame under the frying pan. He was cooking a toasted cheese and worm sandwich. I don't know, said Tom, looking in the refrigerator. I suppose so. He asked us to the Mets game. Say, is that chocolate pudding? Yeah, but don't take any. It's for supper. I could just scrape some off the top, and then you could tell your mother it fell out upside down on the floor by mistake while you were getting the cheese out, so you scraped the dirty part off into the garbage. Well, said Billy. Boy, that sounds pretty devious. Thomas Grout, said Billy's mother, coming from the hall. I'm surprised at you. I think we'll stop there for today, because we're now on to the 12th worm. So he's got 12, 13, 14, and 15. 4 more to go. I wonder if he's going to do it. What do you think? Do you think he's going to be able to eat all 15 worms? I think he's going to do it. But I do think Joe's going to figure out, or Alan, just get those two mixed up, he's going to figure out some way then he can avoid having to pay him that $50. I don't know what he's going to come up with, but I don't know, I have a feeling. So thank you for joining me tonight. I'm looking forward to tomorrow night's chapters, and we'll see what's going to happen next. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.